And I literally Googled, is Sweet Life on Deck real?
But it's definitely not unusual to walk into someone's room and see like underwear hanging up.
Even on the treadmill, you'd be running and then like you'd kind of just like go like this.
And Sarah's walking around with like a bag of vomit. It's just kind of like a high stress environment all the time.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That we lived on a ship for 104 days.
All of a sudden, Sarah screams.
So outside of classes, what was ship life like for you? As soon as I feel better, Amanda just starts yakking on the streets of Vietnam. Welcome to the How Was Your Trip podcast. Today, for our very first episode, we are going to dive into a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity called Semester at Sea. Today on the episode, we have our guest and my friend, Katelyn Larson. We sailed on a floating classroom for 104 days, and Katelyn and I share all the details, what Semester at Sea is, what it's like, and some of our crazy journeys that we had on our own voyage. Join us as we unravel everything that goes into being on the MV World Odyssey, visiting 11 countries in just one semester. You can expect a roller coaster of emotions, laughs, serious moments as we talk about our growth as we leave our voyage. So fasten up your seatbelts or maybe even your life vest as we dive into this unforgettable Semester at Sea podcast with Katelyn Larson. All right, guys, let's do this. All right, well, let's get started. Katelyn, welcome to the How Was Your Trip podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Well, I'm super pumped to talk about Semester at Sea today. When I wanted to do an episode on this, I knew that I needed to have you on right away. So if you want to start us off and just explain kind of what Semester at Sea is and kind of your story on how you even got to Semester at Sea.
Yeah. Well, Semester at Sea is basically the real life version of Sweet Life on Deck, which most people have some sort of reference to. So that's like the easiest way to explain it. We did a full college semester on a cruise ship, basically. Not like a full size like Carnival cruise ship, but it had 9 decks. There were like 600 students, give or take. And yeah, it was so fun. We went all around the world. We fully circumnavigated. It seems weird to think about now because it seems so normal, but like that's such a bizarre concept for most people. But yeah, we literally lived on a cruise ship.
Like, how
that's the
many?
Best way to explain it.
We stopped in 11 countries, right?
11 countries, and I think we stopped. We had like 13 stops technically.
Okay,
including Hawaii and then like embarkation and debarkation, right?
Yeah. Worm and I are going on a cruise in May. And so we've been watching like YouTube videos on the cruise we're going on and stuff. And I haven't been on a cruise since Semester at Sea. I'd been on cruises before SAS and I haven't been on one since. And I did not realize how small our ship was compared to like a normal cruise ship. But I'm watching all these videos of cruises and I'm like, our ship was tiny because I kind of compare everything now to Semester at Sea. And our ship was so small compared to other ships, which I love. It kind of made it all more intimate and homey. It is just pretty crazy that we lived on a ship for 104 days. So what made you want to go on Semester at Sea? How did you find out about SAS? And like, how did you convince yourself to go? Because that is a pretty crazy adventure.
I remember watching Sweet Life on Deck when we were, middle school, elementary school, loving it. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? And I remember being in my high school English class in like my junior year. And so I remember just Googling like, oh, I wonder if like there's any sort of like Sweet Life on Deck option. And so I Googled it and I found Semester at Sea and I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like I could actually do this. And so I kind of tucked it away, had a couple years, and then there were 2 guys that I was friends with that went the year ahead of me in college, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is an actual option. Like I can do this. So then did all the research, ended up applying for it, was super excited, knew it was going to be like an adventure of a lifetime, also terrifying because it's like a completely different study abroad experience. And so I was like, oh, like I don't know anybody who's like quite at the same level of extreme that I'm at who would want to go on it. And I mean, I don't believe in coincidences, so it's definitely more of a God thing. But I was in a J-term class and there was a girl who like walked in, and neither of us were really supposed to be in this class. It was kind of just weird circumstances that like put us here. And she like sat next to me and we were chatting, and we both had screensaver photos like on our computer that like when your computer was sleeping, um, it would just like rotate through them. And we both had a ton of travel pictures. And so I was talking to her about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this study abroad program. Like, if you're interested, you should totally look into it. And she did. And so I sent her the link to it. And lo and behold, a year later to the exact day that I sent her the link to Semester at Sea, we like boarded the ship as roommates,
That's insane.
which was really cool. So it felt very like, I felt very alone when I first applied for it and like got accepted and everything. And then kind of when she started doing it and I started meeting other people who were doing it, I was like, okay, so I'm not actually that crazy. Like,
Yeah.
if other people are doing this too, like it can't be that, insane of a thing.
Your story is so similar to my story because I was a junior in high school and I literally Googled, is Sweet Life on Deck real?
Mm-hmm.
And when I started the process, there were about 5 of my friends that said they were going to do it with me. And so that was definitely a lot easier to start the process. Well, one by one, they started dropping out and I was really nervous to go. And I've always loved travel, but it still makes it hard when you're by yourself committing to traveling the entire world. So I like had a moment of like, do I still go? And oh my gosh, I'm so glad I went because it was the most life-changing, best experience ever. And I can't imagine.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I would have regretted that for the rest of my life if I hadn't gone just because I didn't know anyone. And obviously I made incredible friends and happy I went. Okay, I'm going to ask you the question that you've been asked 1,000 times and it's the hardest question to answer, but we have to ask it. What was your favorite country?
If I'm being totally honest, the one that I'd go back to and the one that I would like relive over and over is probably Vietnam, which is fun because I did the whole thing with you, but it just like the food, the people, the experience, the like in a weird way, the lack of other people having been there. There's just not as high of a number of people who've gone. And so it's really fun to be able to explain my experience and why I loved it and get them excited to go. So that's probably what, if I had to pick one, that would probably be my number one.
Okay, and you were the only one in our group that did not get sick in Vietnam, right?
That's true. That's probably why I liked it. Yeah. I have like a weirdly iron stomach.
We got so sick in Nam. Katelyn and I traveled with 3 other girls in Vietnam, and Josie got sick first, and she had to travel in Sapa by herself on a motorbike, on the back of a motorbike with this guy that we didn't know. Because she literally couldn't travel with us because we were hiking 16 miles. And then when she got better, I got sick. And I was throwing up on a bus, an overnight bus for 8 hours. And then as soon as I feel better, Amanda just starts yakking on the streets of Vietnam.
Oh my gosh. About that.
What a time.
One of my favorite pictures of you ever is like right after you got sick and we're like getting off this bus. And like for context, half of our trip was like we were roughing it beyond belief. We were hiking 16 miles through the Sapa Mountains, like no electricity, no nothing. And then the other half we were on like a luxury yacht in Holland Bay. So it was very like each side of kind of the spectrum. And as we were transitioning from hiking and like going to our transfer to get on the yacht, we just looked so rough. And Sarah's walking around with like a bag of vomit. And I have a photo and like you just like look at her and it's just like you can just see the whole night like the horribleness like written on her face. And it was like not funny in the moment, but like looking back on it, it's like one of the best memories because I'm like, we figured it out. Like we made it through.
It is so funny to look back on now. And I remember Caroline literally taking photos and videos of me as I'm yakking on this bus. And I remember thinking, this sucks right now, but this will be such a story one day. And I told someone after we got off, because I was really trying to stay in high spirits. And someone asked me, like, why are you not more upset right now? And I was like, I could be throwing up in Alabama or I could be throwing up in Vietnam. And I will take Vietnam any day. Well, clearly we have so many memories from semester at sea. But if you wanted to kick off with like one favorite that stood out, what do you think that would be?
Oh my gosh, that's a really, I'm like going through all of the countries basically. Um, okay, I do have a favorite. I think the one that I think back to where it was just like the most stereotypical travel story, but so like I don't know of anybody else who shares this type of memory, but it was in Vietnam, ironically, and it was when we were hiking, and there's like this, I don't know, like 2 hour stretch where it was just like everything seemed like it was going wrong. Like we were walking in between, or hiking, I suppose, in between, what were they, rice fields? But they're like
Mm-hmm.
tiered.
Yep.
And we're like walking on the sides, and all of a sudden Sarah screams, and we like all look over, and she like stepped in this like what it was like
I like
a puddle
fell.
or mud puddle or something of like, yeah, of like water buffalo poop. And it was, and you got your entire foot covered,
If it
and
couldn't
like
get any
your water
worse.
bottle, and yeah, it was so bad, but it was so funny, but you had such good spirits about it.
I think what's so great about semester at sea is someone's always going to keep you in check on like, look what we're getting to do. Like, and it's really not that bad. And if it is that bad, then, obviously things get more serious and, you're taken care of. But it was, I was always reminded in those moments of like, okay, we're literally sailing the world. We're having the best time ever. Which, speaking of,
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought about it the other day. We have been off the ship for 5 years, which is
Oh,
crazy.
I know. I knew you were gonna say that. It makes me so
That's
sad.
insane.
Like, I truly think about it every day.
Hmm.
I know. I don't know how we're that far like past it. It's
Yeah,
insane. Like, I don't, I like can't conceptualize it, to be
right.
honest.
And what's even worse is that there's 2 voyages a year, which means there's been 10 voyages
Uh,
since us. And that makes me feel so old.
oh my gosh. But I'm so glad we went when we did. I mean, for a gazillion reasons, COVID being like the number one. But I am really glad we didn't go like when TikTok was a thing, because I
I
just
agree.
feel like our experience was so different from that. But I remember getting back, and people were talking about TikTok left and right. And I remember being like, why the heck are we talking about a Kesha song so much? And they were like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, I don't know what TikTok is. Like, I only know the song. And that was like my first introduction to TikTok. And so that's like how removed we were.
Even just prepping for this podcast, I kind of started watching some YouTube videos of girls that have recently gone on semester at sea, and it's just crazy their experience versus ours. Like they're doing full get ready with me videos and a day in my life. It's just the world is changing. And I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of those girls are able to make money while they're in the middle of the ocean. And so that's awesome. And I love that for them.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just,
Yeah.
for my personality and who I am, and I know you too, I'm just really glad that that was not the
Yeah.
culture of our voyage and that we were really
Yeah.
able to like be in the moment and not really think about social media too much. Obviously, when we got to port, we would want to
Yeah. Yeah.
post and share, but it was very limited
Hmm.
compared to now. That is a major focus of a lot of people who are going on these voyages. So
Yeah.
I love the videos that I
Totally.
have, but I'm very grateful that social
Hmm.
media was a lot more limited. And like you said, I'm sure that the people before Instagram were even, they see us like
Yeah.
we see them. So
Exactly. Exactly. It's always going to be like that.
a lot of people are very speculative on the fact that we actually take classes on the ship. Like people think that they're joke classes.
Yeah.
I would
Yep.
love for you to talk a minute about what classes you took and what those were like. Because I know you and I had similar but
Yep.
different experiences based on our college grading policies. So I would love to hear your class
Hmm.
experience.
Yes. Well, so it really depended on your college on or university or whatever on how they transferred credit. So there was definitely a clear divide on the ship of people whose grades counted for a letter grade on their transcript at home versus people whose didn't. I fell into the category of like my college, it was pass or fail. So I didn't get like a letter grade on my transcript. I just had to pass the class. Um, and then also, at least for me, my university, we had to like take certain tags and whatever, um, in order to graduate with certain types of classes. And not a single tag or not a single class transferred for anything that I needed in order to graduate. So
I
did you
didn't
not
know
know
that.
that?
I didn't know that.
Oh, really? Yeah. So yeah, I think I graduated with like 40 extra credits or something like that because I just like had all these extra ones that didn't they like counted as a college credit, but they didn't count towards like a degree or anything.
Yeah.
So I just like had credits to spare, and part of that was because of semester at sea. But I took global studies, which everybody takes, international finance, which like terrible, don't terrible idea. Um, Product design, and then psychology. So kind of a mix of a bunch of different things.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that is a misconception a lot of people
yeah,
have. So many people ask me, "Oh, but like marine biology and like they think that it is
yeah,
very centered to like stuff that you can do in the ocean." And that is so far from the
I
truth.
know.
We had like
Yeah.
75 different classes offered on
Hmm.
so many different topics. And so I tell people that
Hmm.
honestly, unless you are going into the medical field, I do think that is like the one area that's kind of
Hmm.
harder. I've seen like nursing friends try to map out SAS, and it is a little bit harder for
Yeah,
them
it's
to
too
be able
hard.
to. There's no classes really that like transfer for them. Because I knew
Right.
that I was going on from freshman year of college, I was able to kind of like bank some of my general education
Yeah.
classes. But that is so
Hmm.
unfortunate that none of your classes transferred to your degree.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean it was what it was at that point, and I was like whatever. I'm still going. It's not going to stop me.
Did you enjoy your classes?
I really loved psychology and I really loved product design. I actually learned a ton in both of them, and the professors were phenomenal. I've actually kept in contact, minimal contact, but like some contact with both of them. Um, Global studies, maybe not everybody feels this way, but I felt like it was a joke. I
Yeah.
like didn't show up half the time, to be honest. And then international finance, I think we all ended up getting a passing grade for that. Um, and the only time I got sick on that class was during our one of our tests. So I walked in, it was like a 50-page or 50 question test. I think I spent 3 minutes and just like marked it up because I was like I can't
Yeah.
be here. I'm gonna be sick.
And
Like I
that
need
class
to get
was
out of
like
here.
actually hard, right? Like I think
It
Caroline
was,
was in that class.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was. It was hard. It was a hard class.
The professors were actually pretty strict on the ship. And I do think they probably deal with a lot of students
Yeah.
that take it as a joke. But I was not in the group that had pass fail. So it was really
Yeah.
hard for those students to focus because, especially, I remember bombing the global studies exam at the end because the class was
Yep.
a joke, but the final exam was kind of hard. And it was so hard
It was
because
kind of hard.
you've made great friends by this point. You have like what, a week or so left on the ship. The last thing you want to do
Yep.
is study for this exam when all your friends that are in pass fail are hanging out, playing
Hmm.
cards, going like watching movies, all this fun stuff. And so
Yeah.
it was really hard. And like I'm overall a really good student, but it was still really hard for me to like lock
Hmm.
down and study for a test when all your friends are like, no, this test is a joke because you have to make a
Yeah.
61 on the on the test to get your pass
Yeah.
grade. I will say I will commend the
Hmm.
professors. I have never had professors teach in a way that the professors on the ship taught. They taught very hands-on.
Mm.
I was rarely just
Yeah.
listening to a lecture with a PowerPoint and taking notes. You know, shout
Yeah.
out Ken Kushner, who still teaches on Semester at Sea. He was such a
Yep, he
great
does.
professor, and he really taught us a lot about social economics and just a lot of
Hmm.
different cultural norms and cultural differences. He was a really, really engaging professor, and I'd never really been taught that way in
Hmm.
a college setting before. So I did enjoy my classes
Hmm.
to an extent, but it did suck that I like really had to pay
Yeah.
attention a lot.
One other like really big misconception is like you don't get weekends on semester at sea. Like you don't really have study days, so you
Yeah.
literally have to make sure that you're studying in between going to all of your other classes and then going to all of these different countries. So like you have like absolutely no downtime. And I think a lot of people like forget that because even when you're on the ship, like you're still like you still have to carry on your normal life, like your normal ship life. And so like yeah, we play cards and play games and do whatever, but like you have to have the self-discipline to be able to study and do all that kind of stuff in the midst of it. And I think that is something that like a lot of people either don't realize or don't realize how hard it is too.
Yeah.
So,
And that kind of transitions us to our next topic because, like college life at home, there are a lot of other things going on the ship outside of classes. So, outside of classes, what
mhm.
was ship life like for you?
Oh my gosh. It was so much like pool deck time. So like whether you're in the pool or you're laying by the pool or you're reading by the pool or you're like at the pool sapphire or you're like I don't know, just kind of hanging out.
What clubs were you a part of on the ship?
Christians at Sea. I don't think I was really a part of any other club that I can remember.
I remember
Um,
I went to the TED Talk things a
oh
lot.
yeah,
I don't know if that was considered a
yeah,
club or not, but I remember going to a few of
uh-huh,
those and just if the topic interested me
yeah,
or if I knew someone that was speaking at it, I never spoke at it, but
yeah.
I know Kuba did. I definitely invested a lot of my time into Christians at Sea and obviously we were good
hmm
friends with the leaders of that and so helping them prep for their
hmm
messages and the worship was just so cool because you're
It was
literally
cool.
worshiping under the stars, which is
hmm
crazy.
And it was cool that it was like student run too. I think that's a really unique aspect of it.
Yeah, it is kind of cool how the clubs even form. So, in the
hmm
beginning, what was it like day two? It's like really early
hmm
on the ship. You create any clubs that you want, and then we all come
Yeah.
together, all 600 students, and they start calling out the clubs. And leaders are supposed to like run on the stage and basically like sign up to be the leaders for
hmm
these clubs, which was just a
Yeah.
whole ordeal in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there were a ton of clubs. I mean, there were yoga clubs.
hmm
Yoga was really fun on
Oh,
the
I did
ship.
that a lot. Yep,
I
that
worked
one was a
out
good
a
one.
ton on the ship. I remember my
hmm
knees were destroyed after a semester at sea because we are limited. Run a lot at
Yeah.
home and we couldn't run around the ship, but we could run on the
hmm
treadmills in the gym. And it was really cool to like stare into the ocean and run.
Yeah.
So I would do that once or twice a day. But I remember after getting off the ship, I was like, okay, I've got to do some serious recovery
Yeah.
of my knees after that. I wish I had gone to more yoga classes. I think I only went to like two or
hmm
three yoga classes, and I think they were offered a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I went to, I think they were almost every day. And I pretty much went to, if they offered it, I almost always went. It's so much harder to balance though, like when the ship is moving. Like not always, like if we're really going slow, it was fine. But if we had like a high travel day or like a high speed travel day, like you're definitely swaying back and forth as you're like in tree pose. And that's way harder than it looks.
Oh yeah, and I mean, even on the treadmill, you'd be running, and then like you'd kind of just like go like this.
Yeah.
One of my favorite
Yeah.
memories, a lot of my favorite memories are actually on the ship. It's crazy how many of the memories are from the ship because a lot of people just view the ship as like
Yes.
the transportation to get to the next one, which is not the
Yeah.
case at all. But I remember like people would love to watch the sunset every night. And a
hmm
lot of nights at the end, as soon as the sun went down over the horizon, people would like applaud. And it sounds so
Yeah.
lame to say, but it was such a beautiful unifying moment on the ship. And
Uh-huh.
I loved being a part of those experiences. And every time I saw it, I would just get chills. Like everyone would be out
hmm
there just kind of waiting for the sun to go down. People would be playing guitar, hacky sack, or just like doing whatever, journaling.
hmm
And then it was kind of like a one moment all together. We would all cheer for
Yeah.
the sun.
The sunsets were incredible. Like I to this day have not seen sunsets like I've seen on Semester at Sea.
Switching topics a little bit, traveling to
Yeah.
multiple countries definitely exposes you to a ton of diverse cultures. Were there
hmm
any experiences that changed your perspective on a certain country or people group or culture that we got to experience?
The thing that I always come back to is we, at least in the American school system, like you're kind of taught to look at each culture or each country or each group of people as like a specific thing. And they have their attributes, they have their characteristics, their cultures, their, whatever. But you don't see the influences from other things. And I think the thing that blew my mind the most as a whole was we literally traveled like almost in a direct line across the world. And as you're going from country to country, you literally can see the aspects of each culture like fading into the next one. From the food to the architecture to the like the way that they write to how they look to how they dress, like everything, you can literally just see it kind of like melt into the next one. And I remember thinking, like, kind of putting those pieces together and being like, okay, this is so much different than I was taught. I remember having a conversation with someone who was talking about they're Korean and they were talking about how they find it really frustrating when Americans um like uh call them Chinese or call them
Mm-hmm.
Japanese, and she was like, I understand that they just like don't know any better, but it's really frustrating because the characteristics of all those different countries are so different that in some ways it can be offensive. And I had a whole different appreciation or understanding of that having been to some of those countries. And I remember like feeling very different interacting with each country, or like, the food is very different and how they dress and the rules of the country and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such great insight. I think as far as Asia goes, I had only ever been to China before semester at
Hmm.
sea. And it was really easy in my mind to loop most of Asia into that
Right.
Chinese bubble. And yet we got to see so many different cultures through Asia. I mean,
Hmm.
China is nothing like India, and India is nothing
Right.
like Vietnam. And it's
Yeah.
so Western and American stupid of us to think that they would be
Yeah.
anywhere similar to each other. And
Yeah.
I think my
Absolutely.
biggest cultural perspective moment of being wrong was Myanmar, which
Mm.
really was kind of set before us. I think that Semester at Sea does a really great job of prepping you for each country, but because there
Hmm.
were some political affairs,
Mm. Yeah.
internal civil war stuff going on in Myanmar, they really set it up to be this really dark place. And I have never met kinder people
Hmm.
than the Burmese people. They were so
Hmm.
kind. I know you and I did not do Myanmar together, but a
Hmm.
couple of us, we trekked across Myanmar together and we stayed in a random
Yeah.
woman's home. And I gave a taxi driver my pretty much all of my belongings and said, pick me up in this other city in 2 days. And he brought me
Yeah.
all of my stuff. And the way that we were prepped for that country, first of all, I didn't know anything about
Hmm.
Myanmar before stepping on that ship. And
Hmm.
even then, leading up to Myanmar, we were told very dark things to be prepared for. And I didn't experience any of that. And
Hmm.
I'm not blind to the fact that that stuff was probably still going on in the country, but it
Right.
jaded what I thought my experience was going to be with those people, and it was absolutely
Hmm.
nothing but amazing things with them.
Hmm. I think that's a really good point. I mean, in all honesty, with the American perspective of the world, I mean, historically, Americans, our news broadcasting system just like doesn't always portray the rest of the world. Like we're looking at it from the perspective of like we are the center of the universe, and you're only as good as what you're taught. I remember before I went on semester at sea, and even after I got home, which is always funny when people give you opinions after you did something because you're like, it's done. I
Right.
can't change it. But I got a ton. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe your parents let you go on that. I can't believe they let you go here. I can't believe X, Y, and Z." And they would put their fears of the world on me for that moment because of what the only like piece of information that they knew. And if only you knew that the world isn't how it's portrayed. Like people are kinder, people are way more willing to have a conversation with you and help you out, and it's just it's not as, I mean, it can be dark and scary to your point, but it's not always dark and scary. And I think the only way for you to learn that is to get out and experience it, but like not everybody does that.
Absolutely. And going back to the American bubble, we
Hmm.
didn't really mention in the beginning, but for anyone who doesn't know, there's students from all over the world on the ship. This is not just
Yeah.
American students. I think we had students from 23 different countries on our voyage.
Yeah, something like that.
It was a large number of countries that were represented
Hmm.
on the ship. And I was embarrassed. I was straight up so
Hmm.
embarrassed by how much of the world they knew versus us. I remember them talking
Hmm.
about a crisis that was going on in South America and not having like no clue what was going on. But that's just
Hmm.
stuff that they naturally keep up with because that's just how they always have been. And we,
Right.
as a American, I feel like we definitely have to do more research on our own. And going back to your
Hmm.
point of like we're only as knowledgeable as what we're given. I think leaving semester at
Hmm.
sea, we both and most people took away of we need to be more responsible for
Hmm.
being aware of what's going on in the world outside of
Yeah.
just America because our friends from
Hmm.
Europe or our friends from Africa, they knew more about what was
Hmm.
going on in South America, which is not their continent, not their home, but they still cared about the world as a whole. And
Yeah.
I think us as Americans could do a much better job of that. And also, to your
Yeah.
point, we're both not um, ignorant or blind to the fact that there are dark and scary places of the world, and even
Yeah.
students on the ship experience dark and scary things. But that can also happen in
Hmm.
America. That can happen in your hometown or your home country. I don't even like talking about the hard parts of semester at sea because I do think people
Hmm.
almost validate that's why I don't travel or that's why I don't do
Yeah.
this. And it's like, well, that could happen to you in your hometown or that could happen to you within America
Right.
as well. People just kind
Hmm.
of use that as an excuse not to travel. So I love that you even
Hmm.
brought that up. A little bit lighter of a note, food on the ship and off the ship. I would love to know what that looked like on both ends.
Um, well, the world food, obviously, there's nothing that can compete with that. I mean, if you're willing to try things, you're gonna find incredible food no matter where you go. And that's a total blanket statement because I truly believe it. Um, that was one of my favorite parts was trying the food in all the different places. I mean, there definitely is a point when you're traveling for that long, there's a point that you get to where you're like, I really just need some pizza. I really just need a burger or like something
Yeah.
comforting that's like familiar. So there were times that we like, I remember in Morocco, we went to a Chili's because we were like, I just can't, like, I just need to eat something that's familiar. And that's like one of the funniest memories to me because I'm like, why did we pick Chili's?
You're
Like,
like
that's so
95
weird.
days in and you're like, I just need
I
some
know,
French
I
fries.
know, I know. The ship food. I feel like I'm setting it up to be like, it was terrible. And it wasn't. It actually was really good.
It just depends.
It
I
was,
think the long stretches, it got really hard towards the end.
yes, yes. Because, well, so like, think about it. I mean, for what they were given and what they were doing, we had an incredible spread. Like,
Yeah.
every morning we had great breakfast. It was different for lunch, different for dinner, whatever. But I remember talking, like preparing for semester at sea and talking to people who had gone before me, and they were like, be prepared for a lot of bread, a lot of potatoes, and a lot of pork. And I was like, whatever, like, I'm fine. Like, I like all those things.
They were
Oh
right.
my gosh. That was literally like, if you had to boil it down, it was bread, potatoes, and pork.
Yeah.
Um, because that's like the most shelf stable stuff,
Hmm.
really. And the stuff that's like most widely available across a lot of different countries. Um, and so I would say I loved it in the beginning. I got halfway through and I was like, okay, I'm gonna live at the pool bar now. And
Hmm.
so then like half my diet consisted of like pool bar food, which you pay for. Everything else is
Yeah.
included.
So, yeah,
Um,
people that don't know, the dining rooms were included in our tuition, but the pool bar
yeah,
that had burgers and sandwiches and smoothies and lattes, that was
yeah,
not included. So you had to decide if
yeah.
you wanted to pay for lunch for the better food or eat the
Yep.
pork and potatoes for the seventh day in a row.
Exactly. I remember having like the weirdest meals. It would be like I was having like potato salad and then like six dinner rolls and then like cake for dessert and like maybe an apple. You know what I mean? Because it was like I can't eat the rest of this stuff.
Yep.
Um, and so like half the time it was really, really good, and then half the time it was like I'm having dinner rolls. That's like
Yeah.
my dinner.
I mean, like I said
But
earlier, I ran on the ship almost every day, sometimes twice a day. I was
mhm,
insanely hiking in port, and I still walked away from this
yeah.
voyage so puffy from all of those dinner rolls.
Yep.
Did you bring your own snacks on the ship?
I did bring my own snacks. I packed two bags plus a backpack, and the ones like smaller duffel bag that I had only had snacks in it. And it was 40 pounds. And that seems really expensive, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
We were flying to go embark, and I was with my friend Kyle, and he underpacked, and I probably overpacked. And we're walking through security, and both of our bags get flagged because we both were carrying on those bags, like the snack bags basically. And his gets flagged because the only thing he had in his bag was a big like container of protein powder, an ab wheel, and then like resistance bands. He looked like a total tool. It was the funniest thing. And they have to test all the powder and stuff. So they're like making fun of him and whatever. And then they open my bag and it's like Cheez-Its and goldfish and like hot chocolate and coffee and like fruit snacks and all the things. And the guy looked at me and he was like, "You do know the plane like will land." And they were like comparing, like the TSA guys were like joking with me and Kyle because like he literally had like no food and I had the world's largest like container of snacks. And I was like, "I'm gonna be gone for 4 months. Like,
They're
give me a
probably like,
break."
where could you two possibly be going to the same place for?
I know.
That's amazing. I also brought an entire bag I split it between snacks and toiletries. And I think that was one
Yeah.
of the best pieces of packing advice I got for SAS that I love to pass along to people
Mm-hmm.
because you're eating your snacks and you're using your toiletries. So by the end, you have an empty duffel
Mm-hmm.
and you can put all of your souvenirs
Exactly.
and things you gathered along the way in that bag on your way back. I brought a ton of snacks. My roommate did not. And I remember in the beginning, I barely knew Caroline. And maybe I was just eating my Oreos faster than I thought, but I was like, I swear, I told this girl to bring her own snacks and now she's eating my Oreos. Never solved that mystery on if she actually was or not.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
Yeah, it's so
so
great.
moving on from food, um, people are
Yeah.
really challenged on the ship, and not a hardship doesn't necessarily have to happen for you to overcome like a huge challenge. But I would love to know
Mm-hmm.
if there were any challenges for you on the ship or any big personal growth you
Mm-hmm.
gained apart from global perspective on the ship.
Mm-hmm. Um, you and I have had so many conversations about this. I feel like part of semester at sea, or honestly any sort of like big trip, study abroad, anything, like there's so much reflection that comes in waves after you're gone that it took me like 2 years, honestly, to really think back to the growth and all the stuff that happened on semester at sea, good and bad, and kind of come to a like not conclusion, but like a peace with it. And the two things that I always come back to that I feel like were both difficult and a huge growth moment were prioritizing like my peace over like the wrong people. And then also kind of being able to like prioritize myself in a weird way. So, for context, semester at sea, think of like the craziest people that you know, or like Enneagram sevens, if like that helps you at all.
Uh huh.
And then put them all in the same place. And so everybody is like the most extreme and everybody is the most like nutty and whatever. Um, Everybody's in the same boat. So like everybody kind of has this like level of extreme to them. And it's just kind of like a high stress environment all the time in a weird way. And it's really weird to explain that to people because you're learning how to live with people, you're learning about new people, you're fighting like bias and culture and all these things all at the same time. Everybody's like kind of exhausted. You never really get a break. You're always anticipating the next thing. You're doing school on top of it. So no one is kind of like their true self on the ship or at least in my opinion, nobody is.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot for me, I experienced like a lot of breeding ground for things that like I wouldn't say I stand for or things that are not who I want to be as a person or represent me as a person. And so there were a lot of instances where I had to pick like being by myself or like being with like certain people. Like you and I did a lot of stuff together,
Mm-hmm.
or like there was a group of us that did a lot of stuff together because there was just a lot of like, I don't want to call it corruption because it's totally a personal preference, but a lot of activity or mindset that I didn't really want to be part of. And so for me, that was a really, really hard thing to like stand up for. But then also like learning to be okay with it because there's such a huge amount of FOMO that you have to like be okay with it at a certain point.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, the entire ship basically has FOMO. And so if you don't get over that quickly and you don't like prioritize what's best for you, you're you're kind of a goner. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I think that was probably the hardest thing for me, if I
Yeah,
had to
I
boil it
think
down.
I think you speak to so many things because the majority of people going on semester at sea are going to be very outgoing people. But I think people confuse outgoing with extrovert. And I would like, I am very introverted as a person. And so I needed my time by myself in quiet or just with one or two other people, which isn't something I necessarily would have said
Hmm.
to an extreme before the ship. But I just learned like
Hmm.
I need time to process my thoughts, my emotions. And I mean, even with my
Hmm.
roommates, we had to have a conversation like week one on the ship of, hey, if I'm
Yeah.
journaling, like that's not the time to talk to me because it means like because you are sharing a teeny
Hmm.
tiny cabin with someone that you probably don't
Hmm.
know very well. And we are
Hmm.
obviously great friends now and I love her dearly, but we had to have a moment towards the beginning and she had the same
Hmm.
thing. Like Caroline loves her time by herself. I think that there's a lot of people on the ship that are both outgoing and extrovert and so they don't understand that you could possibly want time alone, during this amazing adventure. And I can have this amazing adventure and still spend, 20, 30 an hour in my cabin by myself or on a deck on the ship, looking at the ocean by myself. So I do think that's a great point. And I love that you were able to like find that about yourself on the ship and like take those practices back home with you. Okay. So do you want to play a little this or that on semester at sea?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Kind of
this is what I was excited for.
kind of a little rapid fire. Um, okay, the biggest question that people ask that actually go on the ship: Berlin or Lido?
Yeah. Alito, I knew this was gonna be the first
You
question.
got to
I could have
start with
answered it without you even asking. Yeah.
it. Lido all the way. Okay, pay for
Yep.
laundry or wash it in the sink.
Oh, I paid for it. I can't be
Yeah,
bothered to wash my underwear in the sink. That's kind of weird.
Caroline and I totally washed most of ours in our sink.
Yeah.
If it got
There
really
were
bad, we
there
would
was
we
like
would send it off.
yeah, Josie and I got to the point where we were like, okay, we can wash like leggings and swimsuits and stuff in the sink, and we like would have that hanging up. But then we basically made a pact that we would like switch off, and we would pay every time we left a country, and then we would just combine whatever we wore in the country. Because like some countries are kind of nasty, and you like not the country is nasty, but like you just get kind of grimy, so you like
Yep.
need the extra like industrial
You
washing,
better believe after
But
Vietnam, I sent everything off to laundry.
oh, yeah, for sure. But it's definitely not unusual to walk into someone's room and see like underwear hanging up.
Okay. Bread rolls or chocolate cake?
Oh, bread rolls.
Yeah. Global
But
studies or skip class?
oh, skip class. Oh,
Uh-huh.
it's easy.
Lay by the pool or play Dutch Blitz?
Oh, can I add a third and be like, play it by the pool?
I knew you were going to say that. I was like, oh, I would just love to play it by the pool.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yep.
Latte or smoothie?
Latte.
I know your answer to this, but I have a follow on question. Inside cabin or window cabin?
Window cabin.
Do you think it was worth the extra money?
I do think it was worth the
Okay.
extra money. I
I
do.
do not think it was worth the extra money, but I also had your cabin to go to when I needed a little window.
True, true. Yep.
Okay, backpack or duffel in port?
Backpack.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Yeah. Okay, let's move into port a little bit. Did you
Hmm.
like taking trains or planes more?
Um, I don't think I really took trains all that often, so probably planes. I've done more trains in Europe.
Yeah. SAS trips or independent travel?
Oh, independent travel.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Hotel or hostel?
I like hotels. We had a couple like really not great hostel experiences. So there's something about like the yeah, there's just something about specifically like a Marriott hotel.
Y'all, we paid $5 for a hostel in India, and we literally
Oh my
listened
gosh, that
to
was so bad.
dogs kill dogs all night outside of our window.
Yeah, yeah,
That
and
was
like you, it was yeah, that was pretty bad. That was one of the worst ones, I think.
that was, I
Yeah,
think, the worst one. Okay, two more.
yeah.
Bargain or full price?
Oh, for sure, bargain. Yeah, for sure, bargain.
Okay, and last one, because I can't remember what you did, but I think you did both. Skydive or bungee jump?
Oh, I did both. I liked skydiving better.
Yeah. I loved
Yeah.
skydiving, but I couldn't convince myself to bungee jump. Like I don't even have a desire to. Like it sounds
Yeah.
horrible. I would rather jump out of the airplane, which is way higher.
It's I at least my perspective of it was bungee jumping, you're way more aware of like how high you are because you can see everything and you like have to walk to it where like I've been on tons of planes, so you don't necessarily conceptualize that you're about to jump out of it. And so you don't even really realize it until you like fall out of the plane, you catch your breath, and then you realize like what you're doing kind of
Yeah.
thing. Whereas bungee jumping, you are very aware of it the whole time.
With skydiving, you're so high you can't even see the ground. And in a way, that
Hmm.
almost helps. And the fact that there's someone on your
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
that I know the guy on my back is not going to let himself die. Therefore, I will not die.
Yeah.
Bungee jumping,
Yep.
you're just holding
Totally.
on to this thing. And no, it's not for me. Did
Yeah, it's
you
true.
did you
Yep.
cage dive with sharks?
Yeah, I did that
Okay,
too.
then a bonus. Skydive or cage dive with sharks?
Probably skydiving, only because the sharks actually weren't that scary to me, but the water was so cold, and I'm such a freeze baby that like the only thing that's uncovered is like right here because
Hmm.
you're like head to toe covered like everywhere else. And my lips were like the color of my shirt.
Oh
Like
my
it was
gosh.
so, they were so blue. I was freezing. So I don't think I could like get my wetsuit off for a while because I like couldn't move my body basically.
That's
So
crazy. Yeah, couldn't be
yeah.
me. So, for future students that are wanting to travel on semester at sea, what advice do you have for them? Or even if they're considering going versus not going, going versus doing a traditional study abroad, what advice do you have for anyone that's considering SAS?
Ooh. If you're trying to consider or if you're trying to decide if you want to do a study abroad, a different one or SAS, I would say if you can make it work, 100% do SAS. And then if you're still fiending, do what I did and just study abroad again. Like
Yeah,
that stuff is always going to be there, but there's not always an opportunity to do SAS.
right. Yeah. I didn't even know that studying abroad multiple times was a thing in college till I was on semester at sea. And I learned that there were
Yeah.
a lot of students on the ship that were doing multiple study abroad programs. So for someone like Katelyn, who has done both traditional study abroad and semester
Hmm.
at sea, which one did you genuinely like more?
Semester at sea. You
Yeah.
just get so many more experiences, and I think there's definitely a benefit. I didn't live abroad when I studied abroad the second time, which I think there's always a benefit to that. I hear a lot of really great things from people who did that, but you only get like a small piece of the world when you do that.
Absolutely. There's definitely pros and
Hmm.
cons with semester at sea. I do tell people that if there is a culture that you are passionate about immersing yourself in, then go live abroad, do
Hmm.
that. But you can also do that post college. You
Hmm.
can do that anytime. Whereas
Exactly.
semester at sea is
Hmm.
really, we didn't even dive into lifelong learners and whatnot. There
Hmm.
are opportunities to go on semester at sea,
Hmm.
not as a student, but you will never have that kind of experience again in your life.
Can I say one other like piece of advice?
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, the best advice I got from people who went on the ship before me was take advantage. Like, meet the new person, try the new thing. Like, if you can do it at home, maybe try not doing it on ZAS and like constantly put yourself out of your comfort zone and just do different things. And I think I did that for the most part. Obviously, there are things that I wish I would have done differently, but that, such is life. And so my biggest piece of advice for people who are going on semester at sea is to just think about the perspective of yourself like 20 years later, and are you really taking full advantage of the opportunity by doing like what you're doing?
I could not
That's
have said that better if
yeah.
I wanted to. I think that is the best advice you could give someone on semester at sea, because I think that you get off and it's like, well, dang, I wish I had had more conversations with people I wasn't friends with, or I wish I had,
Hmm.
I know I was sick during Sea Olympics, and I know a lot of strong
Hmm.
friendships were made during that time. And it's like, well, I wish I had just like at least gone out there to like watch, or, whatever it
Hmm.
might be.
Yeah.
So I think that is truly the best advice you can give someone going on semester at
Hmm.
sea. So thank you
Yeah.
for leaving us with that.
Yeah.
And the final
Yeah.
question, where is next for Katelyn?
The two trips I'm planning are to Ireland and Portugal.
Ah,
So that's
so
where's
fun.
next.
I want to go to Portugal so badly. So you have to let me know how it goes and let me know all the
Yeah.
tips. So, is there anything you
Oh,
want to
I will.
plug before you go?
I'm really not that active on pretty much anything. I do have, if you're like curious about my, I'm just being honest. Um, if you want to check out my experiences from semester at sea, I have like my blog, my semester at sea blog, and I use it for other travel too. But that people who go on semester at sea seem to really like resonate with. So if you want to check that out, you totally can. It's just my name, CaitlinLillian.com, which you'll have to put that somewhere because no one can spell either of those.
I will put it in the show notes down below.
Yeah.
And Caitlin's blog is amazing. I've referenced it so many times and just kind of reminisced on Semester at Sea as well. She writes in such a great way, and you can literally hear her voice in her writing. And so I definitely encourage anyone who is interested in Semester at Sea or just wants to learn more about it, whether or not you want to go on Semester at Sea or not, I encourage you to go check it out. All
Cool.
right. Well, thanks, Caitlin. Wow, I knew that was going to be a good episode, but I did not know how much we would reminisce on Semester at Sea on that podcast. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for coming on and sharing all of your wisdom and anecdotes from Semester at Sea. I hope today's episode gave you a little insight on what goes into life on the MV World Odyssey and stopping in 11 different ports, sailing the entire world. It definitely made me miss Semester at Sea. So if you've ever considered going, I highly encourage you to. We are meeting up with both of our roommates later this year. So all four of us will be together for the first time in a really long time. So if you have any extra questions about what goes into Semester at Sea, what is Semester at Sea, who can go, how to go, or even just some fun questions on our journeys, drop them in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or email them at howwasyourtrip@gmail.com, and we would love to answer those on an episode later this year. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, like, comment, and review down below, depending on what platform you're on. And I really appreciate each and every one of you for watching this episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you back here in 2 weeks.